Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Football Manager 2024 Help Me Play series, where I'm asking our viewers to help me figure out this game and help me figure out how to be successful here with Chelsea. And I appreciate the strong response in the comments to our first episode. I've read them all and appreciate those of you who have shared your thoughts with me. A few general themes that we'll be talking about here today. I've simmed ahead about 3 weeks from the initial episode. We've had three friendlies right now. The initial friendly with our starting 11 against our second 11. And you can see we've had a couple of road fixtures as well. Beat HSV 1-0 on the road, and then just were defeated yesterday 1-0 by Salzburg. Also on the road, we have a friendly that we scheduled with RC Lens coming up very shortly. A few key themes in some of the comments, so I'll start by talking about some of the things that those of you who have commented have shared with me that have been helpful to me. Several of you mentioned adding a face pack, adding a logo pack, adding different skins to the game. I've spent a little bit of time trying to add the proper logos, and when I say a little bit of time, I mean I've wasted about 3 hours on that. Followed some tutorial videos on adding the logos, and it felt like I had done it, but our logo for Chelsea temporarily went to the Premier League icon rather than the Chelsea logo that was in the logo pack. So I've spent way too much time banging my head on that. But I get the point that some of you made that it will make the game better once I actually have faces in for some of these people, as well as the potentially correct logos and kits, and might even add a skin. But I guess what I'm trying to understand, and I've seen lots of skins in Football Manager videos that I watch of others, it seems like it's basically just a way to organize the information differently. Doesn't seem all that exciting to me, but I'm wondering what the big advantages of a different skin is, other than maybe you can organize a few screens a little more effectively or make things look prettier. But I will be continuing to explore the face packs, the logo packs, the kit packs, and hopefully get things set up properly. But at this point, I've wasted way too much time on that, and I'm also cautious about just downloading random garbage from people across the internet. Not that this information is garbage, and I'm sure there's people who put a lot of time into creating it, but not something that I am particularly adept at, and it doesn't really affect my fun with the game. But since I'm taking anyone who continues to watch on this journey with me, and many of you have suggested that, it's something that I would like to add into the game. Second thing that I've spent some time thinking about, thanks to the inputs of several of you, is tactics. And this is an area that I'm admittedly not an expert on. What I've ended up doing is establishing 3 tactics for us, and there was no big scientific method that got me there. I basically took the 3 tactics that our assistant coach gave a thumbs up to, and then basically used the formation within those tactics that also got a thumbs up. So not particularly sophisticated. We still have the vertical tiki-taka with the 4-3-3, Gegenpress with a 4-2-4, and last but not least, fluid counterattack with a 5-3-2 formation. So those were the 3 formations that our assistant felt were the most appropriate for the personnel we have. I guess my question that I'm hoping some of you who are far more advanced than I am in this game might be able to help me with would be whether it makes sense to have 3 different tactical styles and have 3 different formations for those tactical styles? Or are there any advantages, for instance, since we're using a 4-3-3 in the vertical tiki-taka, to also go with a 4-3-3 when we're playing in the gegenpress? Maybe a naive question. It probably is to some of you, but any thoughts on the topic around tactics would be helpful to me. And then what I've been doing through the friendlies that we have been playing is using one tactical style for a while, switching to another tactical style, trying to get as many different players during the friendlies, experience in as many of the different tactics and formations in game conditions as they possibly can. Typically in those friendlies, I'm kind of playing a real team for the first half, maybe letting them play 10-15 minutes in the second half, and then kind of emptying my bench and taking everyone out, bringing on a whole new team for the last 30 to 40 minutes of the game to just try to get some younger players some experience, and also ease the team, some of whom are not in peak condition yet, back into better shape, although we have finished up our training camp in Singapore at this point, so the players should hopefully be starting to round into a bit better form. And another question that I got in the comments was which leagues I had added in, and I actually answered it improperly in the comments. I was off by one. But the leagues I'm using are England, obviously. Then I did kind of the 4 other, in my admittedly rudimentary understanding, 4 of the other top leagues in Europe with France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And then I also had Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, given that they were close in proximity to England. I had thought that I had put Brazil in, but I must have pulled it out maybe to help the game speed a bit. So I had meant to have Brazil in the game as well. So we'll add Brazil in, I guess, pending January 2nd of 2024. So tomorrow, or today already for some of you who may be watching in Europe. So I'll add that in, but those are the leagues that I'm using. I wanted to kind of keep the game speed at a decent amount. Any thoughts on the number of leagues and the size of the database that should be used would be helpful to me as well. But right now I've got 9 different nations, and we'll be adding a 10th in January of next year. I think the main reason I'm adding them in is basically just to get a deeper pool of potential wonder kids over in Brazil that I can potentially try to bring over to England. And one other thing that I talked about in the previous episode that I've done some work on and appreciate the feedback on was hiring staff and assigning responsibilities. And I have hired a fair amount of staff since the last episode, particularly on the scouting side. I did end up perhaps firing a few more England-oriented scouts than some of you would have preferred that I do. Also ended up costing us some money because it went from scouts who were making $65,000, $85,000, $125,000 a year to some real top quality scouts with extensive knowledge around the world, some of whom are making $400,000, $500,000 a year. So have spent some money to bring on some higher level scouts, and right now I've set up a number of assignments just to try to over the coming months blanket as much of the world as possible and get to know as many potential prospects with high ceilings that we can potentially find. So right now, scouting Russia, scouting the United States, scouting Southern Africa, scouting Sweden and Poland, places that might not necessarily be core to our long-term scouting efforts. The big countries in Europe, as well as Brazil and Argentina, are likely always going to be on our list for constant scouting. And then some of the other scouts, I'll cycle through other regions and other countries over time, based on the knowledge and expertise of the scouts, and also the adaptability of the scouts if we want to try figuring out some new regions where we don't have as much knowledge. Another thing that I did do as far as the staff, and I think you may have mentioned this in the first episode, I did request additional scouting resources from the board, and they raised the number of scouts from 20 to 25 for us. So that was positive. You can see we've still got 3 scouting positions to potentially fill here. Right now, I am managing the scouting myself. Any suggestions on how to optimize that would certainly be appreciated. You can see our scouting and recruitment team is still kind of only average-ish for a Premier League team. We have also added a set-piece coach and a couple other coaches, so our coaching is very strong. We've added some physio and sports scientist talent as well, to make that group more competitive. We've added a couple recruitment analysts. We've got a couple more offers out there. So we're trying to build up the quality and the quantity of our staff, to hopefully help make my job a little bit easier going forward. So we've definitely spent some time on that. One final thing that has just kind of come up organically through the game is we have arranged loans for a number of players, and in some cases we got bids for players for transfer who I didn't think were particularly into our plans. These were not big-time players. These were guys on the under 21 team that kind of didn't seem to have a big future with Chelsea. But perhaps clubs in other countries or lower leagues viewed them as more core to what they were trying to build. So positively, our transfer budget a few weeks ago was 7.49 million, and it's up to a little bit over 11 million now. So we've generated a little bit of money. Obviously, with $11 million and it being July 25th, I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to find a player who's going to be real impactful this year for us. I really not sure about this roster that I have at this point. Wondering how competitive they're really going to be in the Premiership, given that Chelsea seems to be a team in a bit of transition this year with a lot of transfer activity both in and out over the course of the transfer period in real life. So still wondering exactly what this squad is ultimately going to look like when we start playing the games that count. But I am also scouting some, I don't want to say true wonder kids, but players that may have some potential to help us down the line. Not necessarily the best of the best, but I've been watching YouTube videos from some of the established names in the business, most recently FM Scout, in a number of their videos about players who may be useful wonder kids to investigate. So we also have our scouting team trying to obtain some information on some of those young players. And I think it's conceivable if we see some value there with players that might be $1 million or $2 who might be able to help us on the margin of the Chelsea roster in 3 to 5 years, or more likely might just turn into players worth 5, 10, 15, $20 million that we could make a little bit of money off of in the coming years. May look to add a few players like that in the coming weeks as well. And that's kind of what I've been up to in the game over the past couple of days in real life and the past 3 weeks or so in game time. As I mentioned in the initial episode, always going to have at least a couple days between episodes, so I can really integrate the feedback I'm receiving into the activities that I'm taking. Typically, I think we'll post an episode every weekend, and may post an episode midweek also some weeks, depending on what my schedule looks like and how much interesting input I'm generating from viewers. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, would definitely appreciate a new subscriber if you find this interesting. And in the early days of this playthrough, any kind of comments, thumbs ups, and positive feedback for us is always appreciated. Obviously, I am not really trying to compete or in any way equipped to compete with the people who seem to have kind of made putting out Football Manager content their life's work. Kudos to those who are able to play a video game and make money doing that. That's not the point I'm at in my life. Probably not the type of thing I would ever try to do. But I do enjoy watching those videos, but certainly not intending to compete with the likes of Zealand and FM Scout and many other names too numerous to mention, so I won't because I'll be worried about missing somebody. But I enjoy watching those videos. I know this is a very different scenario here because it's kind of someone who's relatively clueless about soccer and somewhat clueless about FM24 since I just picked up the game a couple days ago. As I have mentioned, I'm not completely ignorant about the game. Some of the comments I got were, hey, you need to do A, B, and C. And I was like, okay, I have hundreds of hours in this game over the years, but I haven't really played it seriously in probably a decade at this point. So there's a lot of new things to pick up over the course of the decade, and any help that viewers can provide in the comments section to help me be a little less negligent in my management of the Chelsea Football Club is greatly appreciated. And we've simmed ahead a couple of days, closing in on our friendly with RC Lens shortly, just a few hours from now, play through that game and then probably open it up to your thoughts on how negligent I am with the way I'm playing the game. As I mentioned, we have been continuing to bolster our team. Just hired Sean Gillespie as a recruitment analyst, and David Edridge also set to join us. We're paying compensation to their previous teams to bring them on board. Wanted to try to bring on the higher quality candidates that were out in the pool, figuring that we are Chelsea and we can probably afford to pay up for some top talent. Looks like we also need to decide our 25-man squad for the upcoming season as well. And getting ready for the match, since I'm still really getting to know the squad and the personnel available on this team, largely have been letting our assistant coaches pick the players who they think are best suited. One question that I'm hoping some of you with more expertise in the game can help me with in the comments is, for instance, for our left back, Ben Chilwell here, he is most effective as a wing back in terms of his proficiency in that role. The default here is for it to be an inverted wing back. I guess I'm kind of wondering, with him having kind of 3-star proficiency as an inverted wing back versus 3.5-star positioning proficiency or role ability more accurately as an inverted wingback. If I could say this properly, he's better as a wingback than he is at a inverted wingback in terms of his role ability. Is there any suggestion or thought that maybe you personalize the roles. I'm guessing that some of you spend a lot of time doing this. Just wondering how important it is to have a personalized role within the formations where perhaps someone is able to play that role with somewhat more proficiency than the default role by the default strategy, if that makes sense. Just kind of wondering some general thoughts on how much you personalize these formations and tactics to your player's ability as opposed to just the off-the-shelf tactics that are available. So if you have thoughts on that in the comments, would love to hear them. You can see that we have a few guys who have played in all 3 of our friendlies so far. And David Washington's also played in an under-21 game recently. Have some pretty significant injuries with important players that aren't going to be solved anytime soon. Notably, Fofana is a big injury. Won't be having him back. Nkunku, and then I think there's at least one other real major injury. Maybe it's someone who is not even on the roster right now. But I feel like there's a couple of big-time players for Chelsea that we're just not going to see at all this season, or in some cases for 4 or 5 months till the Premier season is about halfway over. So probably going to have a few more young players getting some playing time this year, trying to see what we may or may not have with some of the under-21 guys, especially while we have some injuries to our more established players. Silva's only played in 1 game so far, so it'll be good to see what he can do. Reece James is still working into his fitness, so we're probably just going to play him for the first half at most. You can see Mudryk here hasn't played at all yet for us, so we've got a lot of guys, and many of these players who are either in the starting lineup or certainly in the list of substitutes for this game aren't going to normally be on the squad that we are traveling with once the Premiership season starts. But right now we're just trying to get to know a little more about as many players as is possible. And I think I mentioned in the first episode of this series that playing through the games was something that I'm less interested in, like the general manager role more than the coach or manager type role in these type of sports games. Like to build a very strong roster, but I don't always necessarily love to run that roster. But for the sake of hopefully getting some thoughts from you about areas where I can improve and perhaps take advantage of some lower hanging fruit, I'm going to play through this game here before we finish up the episode. Generally, I've just been kind of going with the assistant recommendations for my pregame talk. Doesn't look like there was much of a reaction to that one. If you've got thoughts on how important it is to talk to the different position groups, particularly before a friendly versus before a actual league game or a cup game, would love some thoughts on how important those things are. And with that, I have no idea how this video is going to show up either. We'll see. I at least have the volume down so you won't be hearing too much. And given that I don't generally play much of the game, or I don't care to play through all of the games, I generally have it set right now, or I don't generally have it set right now. I have it set right now to just show the real key highlights. And we've got one coming up right here. It's like Reece James taking a penalty. And unfortunately that didn't work out for us there. but we are ahead 3-0 in terms of shots. How important the shouts are, would love your thoughts. I'm just yelling encouragement to the whole team right now because I can't really think of anything better to do. Looks like we've got some more actual action here. And I'm sure that the view that I'm using is probably not preferable for some of you. And looks like we just got scored on Ellie Wall with a goal for RC Lens to give them the lead 27 minutes into the game here. So we are now down in the game, and we've also played close to 27 minutes in the vertical tiki-taka. So given that this is a friendly and we might want to generate a bit more offense being down a goal, we're going to switch to a gegenpress, although it looks like we may have a goal opportunity here unless they're going to be stealing the ball from us, which is certainly possible. Raheem Sterling with the ball now. And Chilwell kicked it over the crossbar there, so no goal for us there. And switching to a more aggressive, also interesting when you get the dugout things, I generally follow the recommendations. But any thoughts on what I should be doing when our coaches make recommendations during the game is helpful. And I also do recognize that by moving to the gegenpress, we are going to be having some players who were in the starting lineup with the other formation and tactics who probably don't fit perfectly. I think if I was going to be doing that in the game that counted, I'd probably be inclined to do it more at halftime or when I'm making some substitutions to ensure that the players are in an appropriate position. But any thoughts on how to proceed with that would be helpful. Heading into the dressing room down 1-0. I don't care if this is only a friendly. I expect a certain level of performance. Win the second half and prove something to me. And it looks like that did motivate some of our players. Before we go out for the second half, just want to check in on how Reece James in particular is doing coming off of that injury. Seems like he's holding up as well. We are playing Enzo Fernandez, as I mentioned, in a very unfamiliar position. And Nicholas Jackson looks like he's getting a bit winded. I don't necessarily want Fernandez out of the game. Probably need to put him into a defensive midfielder spot to really have him be more comfortable. So we will do that. And we'll put Mudryk back where he was. And we will bring on a striker right now. I mentioned David Washington's got a fair amount of playing time in the early games. Young prospect, don't know how much action he'll really be getting with the squad once the league season begins this year. I think we are a little light at striker right now, so I think it's conceivable he'll see some action perhaps as a sub once the season gets going. So we're trying to get as good a view of him as possible in this these early stages of the season, or the preseason more accurately. So we've gone ahead and started the second half, trying to get a little more playing time out of the players that are out there, but we are going to start trying to make some changes here as well. Reece James, we are going to get out of the game, so we'll be looking for some substitutions there. I'm actually going to pause things, not that it's going to take me more than a minute to do this, but pause things in the game and pause things for you so you don't have to sit and watch me make these decisions. And we've made a few substitutions, or we will be making a few substitutions shortly. Still have about 3 or 4 more guys on the roster where we're not going to be making substitutions immediately. But now that we're closing in on the 65-minute mark after we see this play here, probably will take a look at making the last batch of substitutions and at least get 25-30 minutes of playing time for the last batch of players who are going to be coming in and joining in on the action. Oh, and that looks like a great opportunity for David Washington, but will end up setting up a corner. And looks like we still got a chance here. We haven't lost it. We have lost it now, so no goal for us there. And we've got our last batch of substitutions ready to go. So with about 70 minutes game time, we'll take a look at whether we can get a goal or not here to even things up against RC Lens. We're also going to go back to our original formation with this group. We're basically not trying incredibly hard to win, presumably the more positive-oriented gegenpress. Oh, and we did get the goal. David Washington ties it up. So 1-1 between Chelsea and RC Lens here. So now the move away from the gegenpress to a less aggressive tactic will make a little more sense with what we've decided to do. So we are going to proceed with those tactical changes after the goal. And we've got a lot of younger players in right now at this point. Looks like there might be a scoring opportunity for RC Lens here against us. But nothing happened. We will shout some more encouragement at our team, and we'll go from a balanced mentality to a more positive mentality with the 4-3-3 vertical tiki-taka tactic. See if maybe we can get a goal in extra time here to give us the win, but it looks like it's going to be a 1-1 draw here. So David Washington, the best performer. You can see that pretty even in terms of the expected goals between the two teams here today. Good that we at least even things up with that late goal. Shots were pretty even between the two teams. As I mentioned, expected goals were we took a lot more corners, had a lot fewer fouls. Possession was definitely in our favor, so tend to think we may have let one get away from us here. I'll go with the assistant recommendation. We should have won that match based on chances created, and there's no excuses for not doing so. Seems perhaps a little bit harsh for a game that I wasn't really even trying to win, but the players don't necessarily know that, and it seemed like that comment was motivating towards them, so that is positive. So second half goal gets us to where we need it to be. We've got our training reviews that just came across, and certainly at home, I can understand why fans would be frustrated with the 1-1 draw against the RC Lens squad that we were facing off against. And with that, we will call it an episode. If you've got thoughts on what we should be trying to do with this team over the last week and a half, 2 weeks at this point until the season starts, would be very helpful to hear those. We still do have a couple more friendlies coming up next week. Hopefully we can do a little better and head into the Premier League season feeling a little better on our team, maybe get wins in both of those games, because certainly we're going to be right up against it from the start, going on the road against Man City in little over 2 weeks to get the season started. So I'm going to work through the rest of the preseason, likely between now and our next episode, but it's not going to happen all at once offline. So if there's as I said, things that I should be doing, things that I should be changing, or if you have answers to any of the questions, or perhaps more accurately than answers, if you have guidance and suggestions and feedback on any of the kind of open questions I had put out there earlier in the episode, I'll be very helpful to hear that as well. And we will find out how the beginning of the regular season goes in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.